All distances in time and space are shrinking. This is the essence of the digital age. And isn't it what exhilarates us? What excites us? The fact that we can get information so quickly from almost any place. And it comes at such a dizzying pace, at an exponential rate. And if I didn't know what exponential meant, I could just Google it. And so when you're in a conversation, whether it's at the workplace or at home over the dinner table and you're contesting a fact in history or some particular event that might have happened just across the world, you whip out the iPhone and immediately you've got the answer. And it's not just time, but space as well. The globe is shrinking. We can reach across the world to build a workforce or an economy or to organize crime or maybe to incite violence. So information and accessibility, we can get it from anywhere and we can share it almost anywhere. So all distance in time and space really is shrinking. Now, this quotation, I didn't just find it on the internet in a blog yesterday. This actually comes from a speech by the German philosopher Martin Heidegger in 1949. But of course, it's even more true today. All time and space is really shrinking. And so, how do we put this into context? Is this really that different? How do we know that this age is unique? Everyone thinks that their age is unique. Well, one of the ways perhaps is to look at what is the new in the timeless, or to reflect on what's different in a context, or to step back and to think about it. And we do this by understanding that the digital age didn't begin with the internet of the 1990s. It didn't begin with the microprocessors of the 1970s. When did this shrinkage of space and time really begin? Well, maybe it began with global democracy, with the American Revolution of the 18th century, or probably even further back with the Greeks of the ancient times. Or maybe it began with freedom of speech, which is still not universal, and which just years ago imprisoned people in the gulags of the Soviet Union, or created riots in Amsterdam in the 17th century, or riots in Cairo or Islamabad just in this past September. Or maybe it was the printing press that allowed us to spread information more broadly, taking it out of the hands of monks and cloistered and making it accessible to the world. Or to the Protestant Reformation that brought the word of the Bible into the vernacular and away from a language that most people didn't understand. Or maybe it was the Rosetta Stone, which made languages mutually understandable and intelligible. Or written language itself with the ancient Egyptians or the Sumerians. All of these things ushered in the digital age. And the digital age that we get today is really a manifestation of our sense of desire to explore, our innate sense to know what's beyond the next hill, what's across that river, what is across the ocean, on the other side of the world, outside the world with our solar system. This is the kind of exploration that Leopardi celebrates as the spirit of Columbus, or that Goethe celebrates in Faust, that striving to be everywhere and to know everything. Or that Albert Camus, the French novelist, says is the spirit of the theater, where what we want to do is explore one role after another in our lives. And this exploration builds and helps us to drive forward. But this exploration is also what we get with the digital age. But yet we're overwhelmed with information. We're overwhelmed by the compression of time and space. So how do we put this into context? Well, I think we do it by learning, by taking the time to think about these things, to reflect on them, and to understand them and put them into context. Now, the digital age also, it comes at us so fast and in such a great pace that we really wonder whether it does inspire that time for reflection, that time for us to think, that time for us to truly wonder and to look forward. Well, those kinds of things, that effort to try to inspire wonder and to explore and to learn, those things are the essence of a liberal education. And a liberal education is an education for freedom, an education that allows one to speak and to think for oneself, to not be constrained by prevailing wisdom, by fad or fashion, to be truly free and to think for oneself. Now, a liberal education is important for the society as well as the individual, and it's especially important in a democratic republic like ours. And I think we can see the reason why thinking for oneself and not be constrained by isms is important, especially in this political time when we're barraged by campaign slogans and other kinds of things. But today I would like to speak in particular about how liberal education can inspire that sense of wonder in the individual and where that may lead us, and why that is especially important today in the digital age. Now, there are 4 aspects to a liberal education that I think are crucial and that contribute to this. The first is asking questions. The second is to study the greatest works. And the third is to read and reflect and discuss and to take the time to do those things. And the fourth is to understand that this time that we're in is really not that unique. First, asking questions. Questions are the essence. We express our wonder through questions. That's how we know. That's how we begin to understand. Questions that have been with us since the beginning of time. Questions about power and politics, about war and peace, about relations with one another, about creativity and beauty. Questions about the role of technology. And fundamental questions like, what kind of a world are we living in? And what kind of a world should we be living in? Because as Martin Heidegger also said, questioning is the piety of thought. The next thing is by studying the greatest works by the greatest thinkers. People like Homer and the Greeks, up through Dante in the Renaissance, and on into Shakespeare, and into the modern time, Virginia Woolf, and others. And not just in the humanities, but in the sciences, with Euclid or Newton or Einstein, and to bring those disciplines together. Because these authors and these ideas have been speaking to one another through all time. And it's one of the reasons why at St. John's, for example, we have a fixed curriculum. We require of all our students to take language and take math and take science and to bring them together because of this necessity for conversation. And because we believe that a course that's pulled together by a sort of a Chinese menu doesn't provide for the opportunity for the kind of reflection and the kind of sense of exploration and wonder that can only come from this kind of an education. And so we do that. We study and we read the greatest works. But it takes time. A liberal education requires time. It requires leisure. It requires the opportunity to step back and to read deeply and to discuss what you're reading with your fellow students, with your faculty members, both in and out of class. And it's unfortunate that in the world we live in today, in this digital world, the pace of activity is so great that we're constantly barraged with this relentless activity. But in pursuit of what? We've got to have a purpose. And what this time for reflection allows the students is to take that time to understand the world that they're living in and prepare themselves for it so they can go back into it. And it helps give you the opportunity to understand that, as I've intimated, this time is not that unique. The things that really matter haven't changed that much. And you have the opportunity then to go back, to ask the questions that others have asked, to reflect upon them, to read the greatest workers and the greatest thinkers, and to learn and to think for yourself. This is what a liberal education provides. The essentials of asking questions, of studying the greatest works and the greatest thinkers, of taking the time to do it carefully and thoughtfully, and also to understand that this time is not really unique. So what is it that we are going to have to do? How are we going to, amidst this tsunami of information, this relentless sense of activity, this requirement to always do the next thing and the next thing, to multitask and have 4 or 5 things going on together? How can we do that? We have to find the time. We have to take the time and space to stop and reflect. Now, this is the promise of a liberal education. This is the opportunity that it provides. An opportunity not to leave the world, but to step back from the world for a brief period, on the cusp usually of adulthood, in a residential setting, to be able to understand who you are, what the world is, and your place in the world, and then to step back into it and bring to it a life of action. It's what provides the opportunity. It's what gives that sense of wonder and excitement. It's what helps produce the explorers, the innovators, the thinkers, and the leaders of tomorrow. But unfortunately, there's a trend now in higher education that's in the opposite direction. More and more, even liberal arts colleges are becoming narrower, focusing on pre-vocational education, as if education were a commodity on an assembly line, and the product is some kind of input for the economy. Nothing could be further from the truth, and nothing could be more damaging to the individuals themselves and to the society in which we live. We have got to resist that. It is absolutely essential that we preserve those opportunities to stop time, to get distance, and to be able to wander. We have to preserve and protect and nurture a liberal education because, as we know, all distances in time and space are shrinking. Thank you.